your brain picks up more of what there is and you hear it at the same time. That's why I do this. After this, Jesus revealed himself again. So after what? What just happened?
The purpose of this book.
What was the main theme? So he's resurrected. He's appeared to his disciples. Apparently, over the time between his resurrection and his ascension, he periodically appeared. He wasn't always there like he was before, but he periodically appeared to his disciples. So after this, at some point after the resurrection, we don't know how long, before the ascension. That's as close as we can get. After the resurrection, before the ascension, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. That's the Sea of Galilee. And he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, James and John, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the other side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, John, therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had stripped fur work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the full net full of fish, and they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid out on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This is now the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. After saying this, he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back against Jesus during the supper, and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" Said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." So the saying spread abroad that among the brothers that this disciple was not to die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die. But if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? This is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things and who has written these things. And we know that his testimony is true. Now, there are also many other things that Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. So that's the chapter. Let's look at a couple of these questions, and then we'll move into the lecture. The first question says this: why do you think Peter decided to go fishing between Jesus' appearance between the appearances to his disciples? Yeah.
Probably just had a lot on his mind.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus has appeared to them. It's a crazy time, and fishing was what he knew, right? And I'm sure fishing relaxed him. I don't fish. Don't want to do anything but this. I don't want to touch fish. Don't want to touch a worm. Don't want to do any of that. But they say it's relaxing, and you can't talk, so that's not good. Yeah, I think that probably has something to do with it. Yes.
Probably from like a sense of urgency, or like something that he knew how to do what he was used to doing. Because, when you just do something that wasn't supposed to be possible, or like if you thought would never happen.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of weird going on, wasn't there? And this was normal. This was what he knew. Yeah.
I think it was like three reasons. One is that he probably needed money. Two, he probably wanted a distraction. And three, like, he kind of had nothing better to do, so why not do what I already do?
Yeah, let's go to the restaurant.
Yes. So, one of the reasons I'm not using the lecture is they say that he had given up on Jesus and he was going back to his real job. I see no evidence of that in the Bible, and so I would not cast such aspersions on Peter. Look at the third question. Why do you think Peter was saddened that Jesus asked him if he loved him 3 times? Yeah.
He had denied him.
He denied him 3 times, and that was intentional on Jesus' part. And it probably reminded him of that. Even though he probably knew that Jesus was restoring him to ministry, saying, look, it's over, and I have a job for you to do, it still was a reminder of his. Next question. Why do you think Peter was interested in what would happen to the disciple Jesus loved? Yeah.
Like something bad happened to the one who was loved, and like what was gonna happen?
Well, actually, it's kind of the other way around, because Jesus has, and I didn't explain this, but I will in the lecture. Jesus has just told him, you will be crucified too. And so I think he's like, well, what about that guy? What's going to happen to him? And Jesus refuses to answer that question.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting because John was the only one who actually lived the life of all the disciples.
He was persecuted, obviously.
He was persecuted,
and he was exiled.
Right.
Yeah, but he did. He died a natural death, and he was the only one.
He survived from the
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I didn't even read what they said. Whatever. Do you think it's fair that some believers are persecuted for their faith while others seem to have an easy road?
Yes.
Why is it fair?
Well, because greater persecution means greater reward of Christ.
So it'll be rewarded in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. You're right about that. Yes.
Yeah, I think yes, too, because God has like a plan for everything for us, and so that includes having persecution to like believe in their faith, and that's like how they're going to live God's glory.
Yeah, those who live in countries where Christians are persecuted, I can't even imagine how hard it is, but they also have this special connection to God that those of us who live in luxury don't.
Yeah.
Yes, they will.
Also, my year's over. But why do we think that we can just have what is fair in our eyes. God is the one that makes the fair. God is the one that chose that person to be
Yeah, and that's a beautiful take on it. I'm going to liken it to, although vastly greater, right? So, anyone else been along? No, okay. So, so you will have many times when you become parents when your little toddler wants to rule his own world and he thinks he's right or she thinks she's right. I remember Josh insisting that he could tie his shoes, and he was 2 years old, and he could not. But I let him try, right? And then finally he looked up at me, frustrated and crying, and saying, "Tie my shoes for me." I knew that all along, right? I knew what he didn't know, and I knew what he needed, and he didn't. And in a vastly more important sense and larger sense, God knows stuff that we don't know. He knows everything. And our brains, compared to God, are like, I don't know, maybe a caterpillar's brain to, to God. Yeah, I believe that's true. Morgan, I'm sorry, you had something else to say.
I say it's not also not necessarily what's fair or not. Like there are people who are farther along in their walk with Christ, and like we all have a measure of faith. And like those of us who are like living comfortable lives, we may have like a smaller amount of faith than others. But it's like if we are in a first
Yeah, I'm gonna butcher this story, but I don't know if you heard of her, but she was a Dutch woman. Her family hid Jews during the war, and they all went to concentration camps. And she was the only one of her family to survive. And in at least in the movie, I've read the book too. I can't remember if it's in the book, but at least in the movie, she's asking her father about God and about heaven and why God doesn't reveal more of himself to people. And she's just a little girl, and he says, "Right, when we take the train, when do I give you your train ticket? Just before we go." Yes. And why do I do that? Because that's when I need it. And that's like God. He tells us and shows us what we need to know when we need to know it. But I think there's some things that we don't know and that we'll never know. And I think there's some things that people who are walking really, really closely to God are revealed because of that. But as my best friend loves to say, God is never late. He is seldom late. And that is true. He is right on time. Okay, we're going to stop with that on this. And, since it didn't work real well to stop and start it again last time, I think we'll just keep going with the lecture. Now, as I told you, I'm doing my lecture on this. So, I was going to give you this. So, but I know some of you want to fill in those blanks in your lecture thing. So I'll give you those. If you're one of the people who are like, no, I can't leave a blank, I will tell you what the. So the post-resurrection fishing trip meet. It is go fish, no fish. Oh, fish. Give me an idea of why maybe I didn't use this one. And then love is like, well, here it's OH apostrophe, OH exclamation point. Yes.
Okay.
If you want to have
add a
an
question
exact,
mark.
so.
There you go.
And Then under love, that's all filled in. Feed the little lambs. Tend the little sheep. Feed the larger sheep. I can't help you with that. I wrote on the front of it, I don't use this lecture at all. Just so I would never forget that I do something.
I mean, you just have to see Go Fish, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's right.
Bro, I love that game.
Okay, so here are your notes. They are much longer than that.
Goodbye, Bible.
And there will be questions on your final that are based off of this lecture.
What do we got?
Little boy. What? We're getting a whole sermon. I like it, to be honest. I'm not falling asleep. I enjoy this.
Okay, so we're going to begin by reading the first 14 verses again, and we'll be reading the whole thing. After this, sometime later, after the resurrection, after his first two appearances to the disciples, after this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. That's what was at the time that John was writing this, the Sea of Galilee, because of the Romans was called the Sea of Tiberias. And he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. They said to him, we will go with you. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish? They answered to him, no. He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, John, therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripping for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. When they got out on the land, they saw a charcoal fire in place with fish laid out on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you have caught. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now, none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus had revealed to the disciples, was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So they decide to go fishing. Now, opinions vary on whether this is commendable, if this is a good thing, or condemnable. It is to be condemned. It is a bad thing. We know from Mark 16 that Jesus had told them to return to Galilee. And they had, obviously. They're on the Sea of Galilee. And this much we know they were commanded to do, and they obeyed. There you go. Whether the fishing was a way to pass time until Jesus returned, or reappeared, I should say, or whether they were just giving up on Jesus' declaration that he was sending them to preach the gospel, is unclear. I'm not going to make a blanket statement about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's an evidence of their faith or an evidence of their lack of faith, because we just don't know. What is clear is that the behavior depicted in this chapter in no way resembles the way they acted immediately following and for the rest of their lives. They put the fishing nets behind, and they became fishers of men, as Jesus said they would. Especially after Pentecost in Acts 2. They were on fire for Christ. So let's look at some background in it. It's early morning, which I am told by those who fish, which my son is one of those people, my older son is one of those fisher people, it is the best time to fish. So it's still dark outside. Now, is that symbolism? That it's dark within the disciples' hearts and minds because they haven't seen Jesus in a while? There's no way to tell whether it is or it's not. Now, let's talk about the net. So this was a net. This wasn't a net that you cast. It was a net that was tied to the boat. Actually, usually tied maybe to two boats. And then as the fish would swim past, they'd get caught in the net, and then you would bring the net in. And so they would have been in two separate boats. And I should probably do the exact. So when a school of fish swam past, the net would be tightened. And a second net with lead sinkers would be thrown over. So this is the kind of net that they would, wasn't the kind of net that they would cast, that would be cast, thrown into the water. This is the kind of net that Peter threw on the other side of the boat. Now, the shallowness of the water, they were not far offshore, and the extravagant number of fish, 53. And the unconventional use of the net. There's not supposed to be cast, and Jesus says cast it on the other side, and it's like using a hammer for the job a screwdriver needs to do. How are you gonna figure that out? And so all of that would point to the miraculous nature of this catch. Now they go to shore, and it says that they saw a charcoal fire. Now, why is that important? It is an unusual term for a fire. In fact, it's only used twice in the Bible. And I believe John is being very and we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, let's talk about Peter's behavior, because he stripped, and that's not usually something you see in the Bible. And so the Greek actually is a little bit difficult. I think the word I used here, the word I used here was sketchy. The Greek is a little bit difficult to understand. But he probably loosens his outer garment so that he could have better range of motion as he fished. And it's saying he took the time to tie that up around him and tuck it in before diving or jumping, probably because it was shallow water, pell-mell into the water. Of course, he's Peter, so he just, at least he tied it up before he jumped in. We would have thought maybe he wouldn't do that. John, the thoughtful one, recognized Jesus on the shore, and stuck around to help haul in the fish. John was the type of person that if you're giving a party, he stays around and says, "Can I help you clean up?" Right? Peter's the kind of person that's like, "I'm too busy talking with people to help you," right? John helps bring the fish back. Peter just wanted to see Jesus, and I love that about him. Listen, God can use both personality types. In fact, He can use all personality types for His glory. The Johns, the Peters, and everything in between. By the way, this is evidence of being an eyewitness. The narrator stays with the boat. Generally speaking, when someone jumps out and runs to shore or swims to shore, you're going to go with that person in a story, in a made-up story. But the eyewitness, John, is in the boat, and the story stays in the boat. By the way, also the number of fish, remembering the number of fish, the details in this all point to an eyewitness account. Okay, we'll pick up here tomorrow. What do you mean by comment? I can't think.